What's going on, y'all? It's your man Kurt from Triad Hip Hop Podcast. This is going to be another one of our Lost in Thought segments. I really feel like I just want to talk about this rise and fall of Slaughterhouse. You know, one of my favorite hip hop supergroups, if you will. You know, that's what they call these collabs like this. So I feel like I want to kind of, you know, break everything down that's been happening so far and see what y'all think, you know, where y'all think this went wrong, and if or if not, whether it can be fixed or not. So I'm gonna referee this shit. You know what I mean? Give me just a few minutes. I want to go through this real quick. I'm gonna try not to keep y'all too long. So anyway, as we know, you know, Joel Ortiz and Crooked I started releasing songs. You know what I mean? They released Backstage, and then they released a song called Vacancy. And basically, on top of that, they started releasing these behind the scenes videos that they're calling Foreclosure, which is kind of like a little mini, almost documentary, you know, thing about how they explain what's been going on. And so, you know, they started saying that basically they decided to kill off Slaughterhouse because they felt like it's been so long. Our last album was literally 10 years ago, 2012, and we haven't made any music. We haven't recorded any albums since then. And so, you know, I think that Joel and Crooked I are basically coming from a standpoint of frustration. So they're basically like, you know, we're tired of waiting. We're tired of this back and forth of what we're going to do or what we're not going to do. Nobody's really being serious other than us two. So we want to make music, and that's just what it is. So, you know, and I got, you know, pardon me if you see me looking down. I'm just looking at my phone here to double check all my notes, because I just want to make sure I'm covering everything and being fair. I'm not gonna have any kind of bias on who I like better. I love all four of the members. Well, I've never been that big of a Joe Budden fan. I will say this: Joe Budden stepped up his bars a lot, but I'm just not a fan of his rapping, because I always felt like he had dope bars, but he didn't have a voice that made me want to listen more. For me, you know, at times I was like, I'm just bored. You know what I mean? I'm listening to you and I'm just kind of bored. But that's neither here nor there. But equally, they all had top tier bars. They all had top tier bars. Whether it was Joe, Crook, Royce, or Joel. All of them, top tier bars. I'll give them that. So anyway, so you know, like I said, they started releasing these videos, and in the songs they kind of tackle the issues. You know, their standpoint is, we're explaining why this is happening from our perspective, and how things happen from our side. I never took it as anything other than that, but you know, Royce and Joe kind of felt like they were throwing shots at them, dissing them. I still don't feel like it, but it is what it is. I think they just got to, like I said, a point of frustration, and that's where their whole argument is. We're tired of waiting. The fans keep asking, and so this is what we're going to do. Now, Joe goes on his podcast, the Joe Budden podcast, and you know, he speaks kind of vaguely about the situation. He doesn't talk too directly. He doesn't mention Slaughterhouse, blah, 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 too much. He's just more so, you can tell he's insinuating, and then he basically goes on record saying, the situation made me hurt. I'm hurt. And so, you know, that was where his standpoint was. Royce hadn't said anything at this point. So, Crook was doing his own live after that, and he kind of tried to explain a little bit more. You know, he was like, yeah, you know, I did call him with a deal. You know, I called Joe Budden and I told him I got a deal. It's a solid deal. Here's how much money we can stand to make off of it. What you think? And so and Joe kind of brushed it off. You know what I mean? He said Joe kind of brushed it off, and next thing you know, Joe wasn't responding anymore, and so he kind of left it at that, like, okay. And so then talking to Royce is basically saying, if Joe's not doing it, I'm not doing it.
It was definitely ownership in the deal, you feel me? Because I'm a business owner, so of course I'm gonna have an ownership. You know what I mean? That's just what it is. And Joe, stop playing, Joe. Just stop, my brother. It's not no problem. It's not no beef. Just stop playing, bro. You know what I'm saying? You didn't hit me back. You said it on your live. You said you didn't hit me back because I'm always bringing some deal. I'm always, yeah, I did. I try to create checks for my family, dog. That's what I do. If I'm in a circle and we a crew, I'm going to create checks. That's what I'm going to do. You know what I'm saying? So
it appears that they're both out of the picture. Like, if Joe is flat out, just not accepting the deal, and Royce is saying, I'm not accepting anything until Joe accepts, or I'm not doing anything until Joe does anything, makes Crook and Joel feel like, okay, well, they've made their decision. We're good. If they're not going to do it, me and you can do a joint venture and go ahead and just shut it down, because maybe the fans just need something for closure. So that's where Joel and Crook went with it. So then Royce has a live that he does where he finally kind of addresses the situation, and Joe Budden jumps in his live as well. So this whole live is about an hour and a half, hour and 20 some minutes. And so after about an hour of Royce and Joe going in about what they feel, Joel Ortiz gets in, and that's when things kind of get heated. So let's go through first what Joe Budden and Royce were talking about. You know what I mean? So during the video in the live, Royce says he's not open to making music without any members with any members missing.
I never been open to the option of any replacing anybody, doing it with anybody missing, any variation that you can think of. I'm not with it, because I'm I'm the only person in the group who has done a show each different way that you can think. I've done one without Joel, I've done one without Crook, and I've done one without Joe. And they all feel the same. They just feel like it's somebody missing. You know what I mean? So I personally don't think that we could do it.
So he is essentially, validating Crooked Eye or King Crook and Joel's point, because he actually said it on his live. He said, "I'm not doing any music, and there's not all four of us. And I don't care who it is." He said, whether it's Crook, Joel, or Joe, if one of us is missing, I'm not doing any music. So so far he's kind of validating what the other two are saying. Now, then what's funny is a few minutes later in the same video, Royce denied, saying that he wouldn't do it without Joe.
I put a big old bag on the table for the 3-man group because Joe is retired, but Royce said he not doing it without Joe because Royce felt like we wasn't big enough or whatever that was. That
wasn't right. That wasn't right.
It's false. First of all, it's false. It's completely false.
He comes back and, he says, I never said that. You see what I'm saying? So now we're getting a little confused. So it's like, okay, you just admitted a few minutes ago that you wouldn't do it. They said that you said you wouldn't do it without Joe. And now you're kind of backtracking a little bit and saying, I never said that. So, it's funny because during the video, Royce and Joe say that Crook and Joel are liars, that they're painting a narrative that's untrue.
The thing is, bro, we can provide receipts for all of these things. Like, why are y'all lying? What's the purpose of lying? You know what I mean? Like,
but in my opinion, so far, you're kind of looking like the untrue one. Maybe it's a, it all kind of boils down to perception, but it feels like Royce the 5'9" and Joe Budden are arguing based on principle. And so I'm going to get to that. Crook and Joel are arguing based on frustration. We're tired of waiting, blah, blah, blah. We just made a decision. Royce and Joe are arguing based off of principle. You know what I mean? Yeah, this is what happened, but you misunderstood. This is what it meant. Principle, you should have understood what I was saying. That's why I think the whole thing boils down to. It's all perception. So anyway, so like I said, Royce came back, as you see, he denied saying that he would do it without Joe, that he wouldn't do it without Joe. And then later on in the video, Joe talked about stuff like, he mentioned that Crook at one time, because they were talking about the Shady record company. And so, Joe's pointing out that Crook wanted to stay on Shady. And, he said, he mentions two statements. He said, Crook said, I'ma stay. And that Crook said, let's stay. So it's two different statements, but I think Joe is also having a misunderstanding. I mean, I'm sure Crook wanted the group to stay on Shady, but I think Crook, in my opinion, I think he was basically saying, that's fine. If y'all leave, y'all can leave, but I want to stay on Shady because I think they do have a good intention with us and do have our best interest. Even if it doesn't work out, I think they have good intentions, so I'm gonna stay with them. That's how I look at it. And I don't know, I'm not in their personal life, but that's how I took it. So, and that part is not as pivotal to the story, but I just kind of want to bring it up because it's all about perception. So anyway, and then a little bit later, Royce, in the live video, he says that Crook and Joel are just doing this for a check, which, that's another thing. I mean, it's always a possibility that, but they don't come off to me as the type that will only do it just for money, because neither one of them have had problems, doing music or anything like that where they, couldn't just get money. And they, in their foreclosure videos and, in the vacancy stuff, in the backstage video, they talk about wanting to do it for the fans, because they say, if you really think about it, the fans are like the fifth member of Slaughterhouse. So they're like, the fans over the years keep asking, what's going on? When are we going to get new Slaughterhouse music? So because they couldn't get the group to all come together, they're like, okay, let's give them something to give them some closure, even if it's just me and you, meaning Joel and Crook. So anyway, so Royce is saying that they're doing it for a check, which I think he's kind of, not giving them the benefit of the doubt. I think that Royce is looking at it like, if you're just going to agree to do something and not have the whole group, then you must be doing it for a check. So I think that's Royce's perspective on it. So anyway, and then, a few minutes later, Joe was talking, and, as I said, remember I said that Crook tried to get Joe to, agree to some things, agree to the deal, and he said that Joe basically brushed him off and then all of a sudden wouldn't respond to him anymore. So a few minutes later, Joe actually admits to avoiding Crook because he said, and I quote, he's always trying to bring me some deals, which doesn't sound like a bad thing.
And he on Twitter saying Joe would never answer my call. Joe never called me. Nigga, every time we spoke, you was trying to convince me to take a deal somewhere. No. Not doing that.
And so I think that there's another incidence of perception. So I think Joe is looking at it like, you just bringing me some fly-by-night deal, just so we can make music. But it doesn't interest me because I feel like Joe, because of his status, he's done the Love and Hip Hop, he's got his podcast, so he's making probably a good decent amount of money. You know what I mean? And so I think that Joe is looking at it like, I don't care about money, but if you're bringing me just some fly-by-night deal, I'm not even going to entertain it because, I'm bigger than that now. I don't have to be so starving to get attention with a deal so that I'm like a new rapper where I gotta have a deal. So I think Joe's looking at it like that. Like, I'm just above that level now that I don't have to just accept anything. And I think Crook is just getting to the point where he's like, I've been making offers just so that we can at least get something from Slaughterhouse. And you won't even consider it. So, Joe actually admits, in the video that he did, avoid Crook. He was like, yeah, because he's always bringing me some deal. He's always throwing some deals out there. So, I didn't care. He didn't say the words I didn't care, but he's kind of, insinuating in the video. He was like, yeah, that's what it is. I just didn't care. But Joe is also saying that basically put something more concrete out there. Don't just verbally tell me there's a deal on the table. Show me some paperwork, show me a contract, something like that, so that I'll know what the stipulations are, what all the rules are, how this is going to work out in our favor, how it's going to favor them, what they're going to offer us, what we can offer them, blah, blah, blah. But Crook is basically saying you didn't even entertain the idea. And on top of that, Crook says that during their conversation, he told Joe, either he told Joe or he told Joel, one of them, that, or it might even been Royce, but he said that he put the option out there that, look, I'm willing to bring paperwork, I'm willing to bring a contract, but I want to know, I know that Joe is more picky about this kind of stuff. So let Joe tell me what he wants the contract to be, and the people that I'm working with who are putting this deal out here, they'll put that in there. They'll work with us on that. So I think that that's what Crook's main issue is. You see what I'm saying? It's all kind of boiling down to different perspectives. So Crook is like, yeah, I'm happy to bring that stuff, but tell me what you want so that when I bring it to you, it's already the way you want it. I don't want to just bring you anything, and then when I bring it to you, we wasted paperwork, and you say, I don't want it. So, but then you got Joe Budden, who's just like, I'm not going to entertain it until I see paperwork. You see what I'm saying? It's just a lot of this shit is childish, and I'm telling you, we could really solve this shit if they would just let me really mediate some shit. If I could be a real mediator for this shit, we could get this shit right. So anyway, all right, so on to the next thing. So that's always been Joe's stance. He said it in the live. He further said, he was like, yeah, I know Crook talked about the deal, blah, 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 but that's not enough. Send me something, send some paperwork, send it to the lawyers, send it to my agent or something like that, so we can look at it. And so that's Joe Budden's stance. And y'all forgive me for, if my eyes look a little puffy, it's allergy season for me. So I'm rubbing and shit because I'm getting a lot of allergy symptoms lately. Anyway, so, and then later on in the video, Royce says, I just want to point out the fact that we never said no to this deal.
Another point, another key point, important point is we never said no to that deal. We didn't turn that deal down.
He said we never said no to the deal. And so this is where, it kind of throws me a little bit because I feel what Royce is saying. And this is why I say that they're arguing off of principle. Royce is looking at it like, I never said the words, no, we won't do the deal. You know what I mean? And Crooked and Joel are looking at it like, yeah, but you did say you're not doing a deal without Joe. And if that's your stance every time we ask you about it, and we already know Joe keeps throwing the fact that he's retired out there, so what's the point of us continuously begging you to change your mind when if Joe's not changing his mind, that means you're not changing your mind? So that's another place where, you know, they're going wrong. So Royce is looking at it like, Royce is basically like, yeah, I never actually denied or rejected the deal. I just wanted to make sure that Joe was down. But Joe is not down because Joe is playing these contractual games and, you know, kind of giving these different excuses. Oh, well, Crook bought me a deal, but he didn't. He's always bringing me deals. So, you know, what was I supposed to do? You know, it's just a deal. So, you know, it's just one of those things where it just boils down to perspective and perception, you know, which is really sad because these is grown-ass men in their 40s that should be able to work this shit out. When you get to your 40s, you have a certain level of understanding just by nature. Even if you never read a bunch of books, you just start to understand the world different by the time you're in your 40s. You just understand this shit can be worked out. If we can just sit down, rationally explain each other's situations, and really get to the meat of the situation. But nobody is willing to do that. So that's where we're having an issue. Anyway, on to the next. So, you know, Joe said, you know, another thing Joe said that made him reject the situation was because Crook, when he brought the information to him, when he brought up the idea of this latest deal, he said Joe's understanding was that they were going to lose some of their ownership rights to the brand. So basically, Joe was like, that's another reason I didn't want to do it. So, which is right there, Joe again telling you, I'm not doing it because I don't like the way this sounds. It sounds like we're going to have to give up ownership. Now, Crook is saying in his live, he actually said, I told Joe I had a deal that included ownership. So that's another vague statement. So I don't know if he means 100% ownership or partial ownership, because this is their brand and they worked hard for it. So maybe he said more on the phone that we don't know about. Who knows? But I could understand Joe's position on that one, because if you're saying that we got to give part of our ownership to somebody else just so that we can get this deal on a major label or whatever it is, I'm not with that. So that could be Crook's side. You know, Crook might be messing up because either he told Joe something that he's not telling us, or he was so vague that it made Joe feel like that's what was going to happen. You see what I'm saying? So who knows when it comes to that. So anyway, and then Joe brings up the 3-man group, you know, because, you know, one of the arguments that Joel had was, and I think Crook had it too, but they were like, you know, if Joe's not down, let's at least do the 3-man. And so when Joe brought that up, Royce was like saying that that's not true. He actually says in the live with Joe Budden that he said the last time somebody asked me about a 3-man group was way back years ago when we were on Shady Records.
Outside of the interpretation of you not wanting to do it, that's what did it. Maybe you not wanting to do it. Maybe we could find a way to do a 3-man album, but you siding with him and he on the sidelines.
Yeah, but that's not true. Like the only time the option of doing a 3-man group was ever presented to me was when we were on Shady and we were at that standstill with Shady Records. You actually said you're not rapping on Shady Records. So Paul hit me, and he just was like, yo, like the possibility of doing a 3-man shit, I'm just letting you know that I'm open to that possibility if you are. And I told him, no, thank you, but I appreciate, you know what I'm saying? Like the offer. And he was like, cool.
Now, let's hold that point right there, because what's funny is right after that, just, you know, within a matter of seconds, you know what I mean, Royce said, you know, Royce said that when Crook called him this time about this latest deal, he said, basically, since we know Joe is not going to be in it, how do you feel about the 3-man group once again? And Royce said in the live, he told Crook, my thoughts about that have not changed.
Now, fast forward all these years later, when Crooked came and he put the humongous bag on the table, the offer, this is what he said to me. He said, where are your thoughts at in terms of doing the 3-man situation now, like today, present day? And I was like, my thoughts haven't really changed on it. I was like, but why are you asking?
These are quotes. You see what I'm saying? So Royce is now saying that he did get approached about a 3-man. So it's kind of funny, because just seconds ago you said nobody has brought up the option of a 3-man group until now. I'm sorry. No one has brought up the option of a 3-man group since we left Shady Records back in the day. You know, well, they just left Shady Records about a little year and some change ago. But he's saying that back when they were on Shady, like years ago, that was the only time that a 3-man option was brought to his attention. He said that Paul Rosenberg called him and was like, yeah, how do you feel about the 3-man group? You know, I'm open to it if you want to talk it out, blah, blah, blah. And that's when, back in the day, when Royce told Paul, I'm not really interested in that. And Royce said that in the video. But the point, it's just funny because now he's saying that he hasn't heard about that, as if it's something brand new. But then, you know, and I'm not saying that he never heard of it. I'm saying that he's saying that that option had never been brought up on the table since way back then. So, but then he goes on to say, well, yeah, Crook asked me about a 3-man deal and asked me if I was still, would I be open to that? And he said he told Crook, my thoughts about that have not changed. So where are we going with this? You know what I mean? I gotta understand where we going with this. So, all right. So, and then right after that, Royce said Joe actually agreed to do this latest Slaughterhouse project.
I mean, because nothing about the way that Joe's been moving says that he's not gonna rap. But I was like, let me talk to Joe and just see what he's talking about. So I went to you, and you said you with it.
Like Joe told Royce, you know, I don't know if he didn't tell the other two, but he at least told Royce that he was willing to do it if things were in the right order. So here we go now in another episode of Perception, Perspective. You know what I mean? Because Joe mentions that a lot in the live video. Yeah, I'm not willing to do it unless things are right. I want to make sure things are right. But he never says what that means. What does that mean? What do you mean if things are right? You see what I'm saying? So it's like, how do you expect these men to respond when you keep saying key words like, I'm not doing it? You know, even if you told Crook, I don't know if he did, even if he mentioned the term, unless things are right, if you're not being clear on what that means for things to be right, nobody's gonna listen to you. You know what I mean? All they're hearing is you're not doing it. So anyway, you know, and Joe just he reiterates in the video, you know, there's no such thing as a deal until it's on paper. You know what I mean? Send me the paperwork. Let me examine the paperwork. And I get that. I'm with you on that. You know what I mean? Give me something concrete. Don't just verbally tell me we got a deal. Do you accept? Nobody will accept a deal just off of verbal communication. But I don't think that Crooked Eye or Joel were expecting him to just accept it off of verbal communication. I think they were just saying, do you accept the idea of going ahead and doing some music? Because we do have an offer. And so there it is. Again, perception. Joe is perceiving, I don't want to hear it unless it's on paper. And Crooked Eye and Joel are perceiving, he's just saying no because he's Joe and he's high and mighty, and he just doesn't want to entertain anything because he's retired, which Joe has said several times, I'm retired. That's another thing that's, kind of funny to me, but we'll come back to that. So, and then further down the line in the video, Royce admits to not agreeing to a 3-man group. You know what I mean? He goes ahead and admits it. So it's like Royce is kind of going back and forth. You know what I mean? Like, nobody told me anything about a 3-man group. But then later on, he's like, nah, I told him I don't want to do a 3-man group. So, it throws me off when he does stuff like that, man. So I'm just like, I don't know what you think you're saying, but it's not adding up. You know what I mean? So anyway, so Joe comes back later on, and he said that when the songs first came out, like Vacancy and Backstage and all that, I can't remember which came first. I think it was Backstage. But either way, he said he called Joe said he called Joel the very next morning. And he said he got no answer. You know what I mean? So, he's basically saying I reached out, but nobody answered. Now, I don't know what happened with that. I don't know if Joel was getting to the point where he was like, nah, we're already done. I'm not going to go back and forth with you now. You know what I mean? I tried, we tried to contact you and you wouldn't listen, and now you want to talk. And maybe Joel was getting to that point where he, again, like I said, they're arguing based on frustration. So maybe they were feeling at that point, there's no point in talking. We've already made a deal. Me and him are releasing music. So I'm not sure what you're calling about now. You know what I mean? So that could be where Joel was at that point. So anyway, and then later on, after that, a few minutes after that, Joe Budden points out, he says that they are purposely trying to misconstrue what he says, meaning Crooked and Joel are purposely trying to misconstrue things that he's saying. Like when he said he was hurt, they're saying, they knew he was going to kind of be butthurt about it. You know what I mean? But he's saying that they're misunderstanding what he's saying. He had different intentions on everything he says, and to a degree they probably are. Like when he says, I'm not doing a deal without a contract. Maybe because they're taking that as a solid no, he's saying that that's not a solid no. You're just misunderstanding. I'm just waiting for you to do this element over here. And so there we have now lack of communication, because Joe, if you're not being specific, if the only thing that's coming out of your mouth is I'm not doing a deal, or I'm not doing a deal unless it's right, if that's what you're saying, if that's the type of responses that you're giving them, nobody's going to know what the fuck you're talking about unless you clarify, here's what I want, which is what Crooked was saying from the beginning. Tell me what you want so I can get it. So, again, there we have a breakdown of communication. So I don't know. And then, after that, Royce talks about him not wanting to do the deal because he's like, yeah, we're off the record label. We're not on Shady anymore, but there's a lot more to it. It's a little more complicated than that. We still got to iron out more things. That's Royce's stance on it. We have to make sure every little, T gets crossed and I gets dotted and all of that shit. And so, it's like, I don't know. I guess for me, I can kind of understand why Crooked and Joel are saying, no matter what happens, you guys keep finding ways to delay this shit. Because Crooked and Joel are basically admitting that, yeah, we were planning to do music after we left Shady. It's just that every time we bring up an idea of how we can do it, they come up with excuses how they can't do it. So I can understand that. From their point of view, I can understand, look, I'm tired of waiting. Every time you tell me we want to, because like the whole thing about getting off Shady was Joe's idea, because Joe couldn't get along with them, and they were like, all right, fuck it. We don't want Joe anymore, because if he gonna act like this, we don't want him anymore either. So they go through all this long process where they all agree, okay, we'll get off Shady and we will start doing music after that. So now they've been off Shady for now a year, and they contact they contact Royce and Joe, and they're still coming up with more excuses. Oh, well, it's still not this. I can't do it without Joe. I need paperwork. I need this. So even though even though Joe and Royce are somewhat right in what they're saying, like Joe saying, I want a contract and paper, that's nothing wrong with that. But maybe you're not communicating. Maybe you're not communicating that clearly to them. I don't know. Of course, I'm not there. But, and Royce, you keep complicating it more, saying, well, if Joe's not going to do it, then I'm not going to do it. It sounds more like, the fans are waiting, and we're waiting too, but y'all just keep coming up with more excuses. But I certainly understand from Joe Budden's perspective. I don't want to do anything that I don't know is concrete. And I can understand Royce's perspective. I'm not doing shit because we worked hard to build this 4-man group and get it right, and now y'all want to do this partial thing. So it's kind of like Voltron without one of the arms, or Optimus Prime without one of the arms. You know what I mean? It's like you can't send Optimus Prime in the war and he missing an arm. You know what I mean? Most likely it's not going to work. He's going to probably get his ass whooped. He might put up a decent fight, but eventually he's going to get his ass whooped. He's going to be defeated. So I think that's where Royce is coming from. Like, if we can't do the full collective, what's the point? It's not going to sound as good. But on the other side, you got Crook and Joel, and they're like, yeah, but the fans want something. So even if we can't do 4, let's do 3. Let's compromise somewhere just so we can at least give the fans a collective music venture from us. You know what I mean? And so, again, I get it. I get it from both sides. So, like I said, Royce was just looking at it like, yeah, I wanted to do music, but there was just more to be done to iron it out, to make everything exactly right. So Royce is just looking for the situation to be perfect. And these guys are getting old. So I guess the other two are like, look, we ain't getting no younger, man. We can't keep waiting for every crease to be ironed out. You know what I mean? Let's just give them some music, one last hurrah or something. You know what I mean? So I think that's how Crook and Joel are looking at it. So anyway, and then Royce kind of throws something out there, kind of poking fun at them, about you shouldn't take an advance on an album where you won't have full ownership. So, Royce is going back to, that whole thing about ownership. Like, basically, it seems to Royce and Joe, seems to Royce and Crook. God, I'm sorry. These names get me thrown off. It seems to Royce and Joe that the other two are basically doing this just for the money, because it sounds like to them you have to compromise part of your ownership in order to get this album going. Oh yeah, we'll give you a lot of money, but we want to own this much of the Slaughterhouse brand. You know what I mean? And I can see that being something that probably is happening. Now, Crooked is not specifying that, but because he's not specifying that, that leads me to believe that they're probably right. Maybe there was something where the Major wanted to own Slaughterhouse's name or part of the name or brand or whatever. So they're like, why would you compromise that, something that we built, just so you can get money? Now, I get it. It does look like that. I will give them that. But these guys. Royce and Joe, y'all know these two. They don't come off as the type that's just so thirsty for money that they're willing to do anything. So I think that's part of where you guys are going wrong, because you're not even giving somebody who you call your good friends the benefit of the doubt. And so, to me, I just find that kind of funny. And Joel and Crook, when they talked about doing the album, they did say, we're doing this for the fans because we realize the fans are like the fifth member of the group. You know what I mean? This all came about because of the fans. We did a song together one time back on Joe Budden's mixtape, and the fans liked it so much, they were like, yeah, y'all should form a group. And the fans just kept putting that pressure on them until they was like, all right, let's do it. So I get it. You know what I mean? Joel and Crook are like, let's give the fans what they want. But Royce and Joe are like, let's, make the business right. Whether that takes 1,000,000 years or not, let's make sure the business is right before we do anything. So, it's a perception thing. You know what I mean? You guys tell me what you think. Who do you think is right and who do you think is wrong? Or what do you think should happen at this point? How should they go forward? Because this was a good group. You got a lot of hip-hop super groups out there. You know what I mean? You got the Four Horsemen, which is what? Cannabis, Corrupt. Who are the other two? My man from Sons of Man, Wu-Tang, and one other one. But, it's a dope collective. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's one of those things where you'd hate to see that break up over some stupid shit. You know what I mean? But I think that none of them are willing to say, here's where we misunderstood. And then the other side say, here's where we misunderstood as well. Nobody's willing to meet at that juncture. Everybody's standing strong on their perspective. Nah, I know damn well I'm staying with Joe. I mean, this is what I'm thinking that Joel is saying. I know Joe and Royce have both clearly rejected the group, so we're going about it. But, you're not willing to stop and say, what could have been misunderstood on my side that made me think that they said no, just because they said, this is a stipulation. So, and then Joe and Royce should also understand that, we could have misunderstood some things from our side as well, because, here's what they said versus what we thought they meant, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, to me, if they can just meet in that middle, this shit could have been wrapped up. But everybody's just like, nope, I know what I heard. So anyway, I'm sorry if I went a little long. Y'all let me know in the comments what y'all think. How should this be handled? Would you like to really hear another Slaughterhouse album? Is it too late for them to fix this? Should we leave it where it is? And we can kind of, let's chop it up. I appreciate y'all listening to me. This is your man, Kurt, from Triad Hip Hop Podcast. And, we got a lot more to come. So stay tuned. We'll be going live this coming Saturday, somewhere around maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock. All right, man. Thank y'all for listening. Peace.